So I've been seeing so many ads for this plugin. It's a plugin called Rift by Minimal Audio. Basically, it's a bipolar distortion plugin with filtering effects and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So I'm not normally a plugin guy. I don't normally like to review plugins, but I just couldn't help myself. So I asked them to send me a copy. And after playing around with it, I decided I'd break down 5 of my favorite features that I think you will get out of it. Now, before we dive in, I just want to let you know that we've just launched Create 30. Create 30 is a cohort-based course in which you'll create 30 song ideas over 30 days with a community of like-minded producers, 2 weekly calls a week, and accountability so that you stick to your goals and improve your productions overall. If you want to learn more about what Create 30 is, head to the website below at create30.com. I'll leave that in the description. Now, there's plenty of other tutorials out there if you're wanting to learn the basics. So in this video, I'm just going to be covering the really quick basics. So if we load up the interface here, I'm just going to play this little track I've got going on. Nice little bass line from an 808 there. Now, when you look at the interface, you'll notice this is what first comes up. If I solo this bass, this is the distortion response section. That's where you can visualize what's happening to the waveform. You basically got 2 wave shapes. It's bipolar distortion, so it happens on the top half and the bottom half depending on where this blend knob goes. You can drive it, control the output, assign macros, as well as you open the advanced tab, you can do modulation with these different types. There's a filter, a feedback section for driving the signal back into itself, and stuff like a post limiter to assure that you're not getting extra clipping, or if you want extra clipping, you can do that too. And obviously there's a dry wet knob as well if you want to blend the whole effect. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, but at the heart of it, it's quite simple and it follows the same premise as a lot of the plugins like Serum and Massive, which use modulation on different parameters to control what's going on. And the first way I like to use Rift is what I like to call Randomize and Lock. So there's this really cool feature in Rift here, this button down the bottom here on the advanced view. It's the randomize button, and if you click on it, you'll have a bunch of options to randomize pretty much anything in the entire plugin, which is really cool. I like to use the randomize audio effects because that pretty much randomizes everything. If you hover over it with the tooltips, it gives you a bit of a rundown of what it doesn't randomize, such as drive controls, filter cutoff, and stuff like that. But I want to also save a few other things from being modulated. So what you can do is head to any parameter, right click on it and click lock. This will mean it stays the same no matter what you're doing. So I'm going to go to my other bass, which I have modulated, which is this little one here. It's a bit of a different processing chain. So if I open up this instance of Rift, you'll see that there's these brackets around both the cutoff and morph. That indicates it's locked. So now when I go and randomize it, I'm going to click randomize all audio effects. And you can basically just play with it until you get the desired effect. And I'm just going to loop this little section here so we can hear what's going on. Ooh, that's cool. So I love to do this just to get inspired when I'm not feeling super like I know exactly what I want. I can just get like a randomly cool result. Now, the second tip would be to find the sweet spot of the distortion. Now, this is more of a general distortion and processing tip rather than a Rift specific thing, but I think it applies because it's important to get the shape and the drive right no matter what preset or what types of processing you're doing. Let's solo the 808 here and let's hear actually what's going on. Now the filter here is subduing the sound a lot, but if I turn it off, I can hear the distortion underneath. However, we're adding quite a bit of drive, and if we add too much drive, everything basically approximates a square wave. So let's bring the drive back and see how the sound is affected. You can see there that the waveform starts to square off as you drive it more. I'm going to change this to a different distortion type. I'm going to try the shredded one. You can also try this blend control. change the shapes. Oh, I really like the sound of that one there. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. So now we can turn the filter back on. Perhaps we would want to modulate this a bit more. We could then go and say modulate that to a macro or something like that if we really wanted to. Now you basically get the idea of there's a kind of a sweet spot for each distortion type. It's not the same amount of drive or shape each time, but play around because you'll notice that's how you get the different characteristics out of the different distortion types. Okay, so one of my favorite filter types in Rift is the transfer filter. If I load up this third bass here, I'm actually using it, and I'll show you exactly how and why I love this so much. So you'll notice here, I'm modulating the transfer, morph, and cutoff with the follow envelope here, which is one of the modulators in Rift. And basically there's this cool double notching effect, which kind of mimics the effect. If you guys remember back to Massive, which had this cool double notch filter that everyone used back in the day. It's a similar type of effect, but with a bit more randomness. It's like a very valley sound without sounding too cheesy. There are a few kind of similar filters which do similar things, such as the scatter filter, but that's more of a band pass. It's basically anything in this morph filter section sounds really cool, but I really like the transfer filter in particular, especially if you drive stuff quite into it. It sounds good. Okay, back to the main bass. I'm going to show you now the scale snapping that's built into Rift. Now, this functions very similar to something like Serum Effects, where you'll actually need to route the MIDI from your DAW into the effects unit because it will not receive it by default most times. So I've just set up an external instrument here, which is sending MIDI to Rift from whatever I'm playing on my keyboard or whatever's programmed in the arrangement. So if I play anything here, and what you'll notice is that the cutoff of the filter here actually changes depending on the note I'm playing. If I play it really high, you'll notice the filter goes higher or lower depending on the note I'm playing. You can do this no matter what filter type or whatever. It just has to be set to the MIDI mode. You can also use the tune mode, which is a little bit different. Now, there's also this cool note snapping feature, which allows you to only snap to a certain notes that you choose. For example, if you're in the C major scale, you might want to select all these notes so that even when you play a B flat, the filter is mapping to the exact same part. Even if the note underlying is changing, the resonance created is staying the same, which is a cool effect if you're after that. One thing you can also do is match this up with the feedback section, which basically can ring in a tuned MIDI fashion so that, say we want like to go up to a C6. Basically, it creates this kind of cool pitch effect, which is matched by the note that's coming in. You can change the shape and the feel of the input signal that's being fed back in via the feedback. But this is really cool. I got the feedback cranked quite a lot there. If we brought this down lower, you'd hear a more kind of muddy effect. You can turn that down to compensate. You can see there's a lot of potential for these really cool spatial type effects with the MIDI tuning, which I really like. So snapping to the scales, you can also match these by pressing this link button so that the one between the filter and the feedback is matched, so you get these really cool tonal effects. Really sick. This is sounding dope now, and the last thing I want to show you guys that I really like about Rift is the mid-side distortion processing. To show you this, I'm actually going to group all three of the bass channels together that we've created. Let's call it bass group. And I'm going to load up yet another instance of Rift here. And this time I'm going to use it not in this normal stereo mode, but I'm going to use it in the mid-side mode. This basically allows us to distort the mid and side signals separately, which is really, really cool. I'm actually going to select just the sides for now because I just want to distort the sides and leave the mid channel pretty intact. Now I'm going to start from default because I don't necessarily just want to slap on a preset and just call it a day. I want to shape this and kind of control the type of saturation we're adding. I'm actually going to stay with the soft wave shape because it's a very subtle amount of distortion. I'm not wanting to brutalize the sound because we've already done that quite a bit with the first instance of Rift on each channel. Let's bring this shape up and see what we get. Check it without the dry wet. And I'm going to link these shapes together so we can control them on both sides. And you'll notice that only the side signal sounds distorted here. If I went to stereo, so we're just getting a nice kind of crunchy sound out of it. Let's set both sides to pulse, or we could just say blend it all the way this way. Try a few different shapes. Now you may want to blend the output to taste. This just gives the side channel a bit more interest rather than just kind of static stereo width. It also makes the bass sounds just more interesting in general. Let's try a few more distortion types. It also unifies the sound of the distortion. And now I've got a nice kind of unison between the bass sounds because we've been able to process the sides together and kind of create a more consistent distorted stereo width, which is just a really fun, creative way that I like to process basses. Great, but I'm going to leave it at that for this video. If you liked these distortion tips using Rift, leave a comment down below of your favorite ones or any other ones that I missed. And also just like the video so other producers get to see this information and learn it as well. But if you're liking all these videos, stick around and subscribe for more stuff from myself and the rest of the EDM Prod team. But apart from that, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys on the next upload. Peace.